Evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Blair and I'm your host this evening for the second Admental. This is an initiative of the Don Dunstan Foundation. I'm here tonight in place of Will Anderson. I'm a lot cheaper and a lot unfunnier than him, so you're in for a rollicking night. The Don Dunstan Foundation, for those of you that don't know, is a thought leadership organisation established to inspire action for a fairer world and to build on the legacy of the late Premier Don Dunstan, who, for many of you know, was an absolutely magnificent individual. Many of the initiatives that take place in this state are directly because of Don Dunstan, and I don't know about you guys, but I've really missed him. I've really wanted someone like Don Dunstan back in the state because I know that we could go to him with some crazy idea and he would just make it happen. So the Don Dunstan Foundation has a focus on social justice issues through public events, collaborative projects and research. Current areas of focus are growing the purpose economy through the social capital residencies, ending street homelessness in the inner city as part of the Adelaide Zero project, supporting multiculturalism by way of a migration and population growth network, and mental health awareness through events such as tonight. I'm sure Don would be smiling down from heaven in his pink safari suit with that beautiful coiffed hair, thinking, well done kids, you're keeping the ball rolling. So good on you, Don Dunstan Foundation. It's great to have you all here. Obviously you are supporters of the foundation in some way, but think for a moment of the great 1970s rock band Dr. Hook, who said, "When you think I've loved you all I can, I'm going to love you just a little bit more." Why not get involved with us just a little bit more? Why don't you love us just a little bit more? You can volunteer for the Don Dunstan Foundation, you can partner, you can subscribe, or perhaps you can just donate large sums of money to us if you're thinking about dying at any point in the future. And quite frankly, if you have been drawing up the will and you've got a few kids and you don't want to favour one of the children by giving them more, stuff them all, give it to us. It's just a great way of doing that, hashtag just saying. Another important focus of the foundation is Aboriginal economic development and reconciliation through a range of efforts. And with that in mind, please welcome to the stage a magnificent man himself, the delightful Uncle Lewis O'Brien, for a welcome to country.
Marawajanga, Ghana Mian and I Wangani, Mani the Bundi Ghani Adana. Naibiriko, Mankalakala, Tandanya, Mianaku. Nature Yungandalia, Nature Yakanadalia, Padniadlu Wadu. On behalf of the Ghana people, I welcome you all to Ghana country, and I do as ambassador of the Adelaide Plains people. My brothers, my sisters, let's walk together in harmony. I was always amazed at our people. They always welcome people to this country, but they never tell them to go home.
Short, sharp and to the point. Thank you, Uncle Lewis. We do appreciate that. We have a few housekeeping issues that I need to go through tonight. The emergency exits are located at the back of the room. Just run if you hear a siren, any siren. Just be careful though, if you hear a bogan horn out on the corner there, don't run out of the room. We'd like you to stay in here as much as we can. The toilets are located out in the foyer and then downstairs into a dungeon. You actually have to go down some stairs. It's quite an odd sensation actually going down there on the concrete steps, slightly scary. If you need disability access toilets, please just go and talk to one of the Dunstan volunteers at the back of the room wearing the purple sash and tell them that you need to use the toilet. Even if you've got rickety knees, we are happy to get someone to open up the disability access toilets for you. Just don't give them too much detail about what you're actually going to do in the toilet. Just keep that one to yourself. Mobile phones, please put them on silent, but definitely not off, because this event last year trended in social media speak, and we would like to do that again. Not because we're narcissists and we love ourselves. This is all because this event obviously is here to get people talking about mental health and to take some of the stigma off mental health. So the more that we talk about it, the more that we tweet about it, the more that we share it with our friends, the better it's going to be. So our hashtags are hashtag Admental, hashtag public health, hashtag let's talk, and if you're not connected with the Dunstan Foundation, their Twitter handle is @DonDunstan. So get onto that, keep your phones out, but please keep them on silent. An evening like tonight could not, of course, take place without our sponsors. So when I call out our sponsors, if we could please have a round of applause. Firstly, our two event partners, the Don Dunstan Foundation and SA Health. Thank you so much. Our sponsors tonight, Flinders Foundation, Return to Work, AADC, Flinders University and the University of Adelaide. Thank you. And special thanks go to the Mental Health Coalition of South Australia, Fresh 92.7, Neami International and SafeCom, which is the South Australia Fire and Emergency Services Commission, the Faye Fuller Foundation and the Police Association of South Australia, PASA, Nation, Magnificent Advertising Agency and Shingleback. Thank you so much. So I'm here tonight because I think that mental health is incredibly important. I had perfectly solid mental health until I saw on the website that the Don Dunstan Foundation actually had listed me inaccurately as a comedian. That was today, and seriously, I almost vomited on my shoes with nerves. I'm no comedian. As a former talk show host and newspaper opinion columnist, I've been called many things in my time. A mouthy hack, an Anne Wills wannabe, and of course it goes without saying a sex goddess. But I've never, ever been called a comedian, so apologies to any of you who have paid your $20 and think that I'm going to slay you in the aisles with my witty and well-written material. I'm no comedian, which is something that you'll be attesting to by the end of the evening. But I am a person of profile here in Adelaide. I've spent 20 years in the media, and when I was in the media, I always used my profile to push the message about mental health and the importance of us working at clearing the stigma so that we could feel free to talk about it. I've always been an oversharer. Those of you that know me know that. It's actually been part of my shtick and part of my appeal as a radio host. And I was lucky that I had never experienced shaky mental health myself, which is probably why I found it really easy to discuss, because the issue wasn't mine, it was somebody else's, and it was always at arm's length. That was, of course, until December 2015, when something I said on national television was totally misconstrued by members of the Twitterverse community, and information was put out in cyberspace about me that was actually inaccurate. I'm not going to go into the full details, but basically someone said that I said something which I never said, and before you knew it, my life was in meltdown. I received death threats against my children. In fact, 2 Facebook pages popped up saying that my 4 children should be taken from me. And these Facebook pages possibly were started by my own children because they seemed to be quite excited about the prospect of it happening. But for 20 years, I'd worked really hard in the social justice space. I'd worked really hard to be a good person and to get a fantastic reputation, or a reputation that I could be proud of. And literally, within 24 hours, that reputation went down the toilet, and I was bullied, basically, online really, really badly. It felt like I was on the ground being kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked, and I couldn't get up and I couldn't say anything because we are talking thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Needless to say, my mental health was affected for the very first time. It really halted me in my tracks. I wasn't my usual self. I hid my anxiety from my family as I didn't want to bother them. I hid it from my work colleagues, just avoiding the things that would trigger me. And again, those of you that know me, maybe you've noticed that I haven't been on television since 2015, and maybe you've noticed that I haven't written an opinion column since 2015 either. I hid it from my friends as well, because you don't want to burden someone with your mental health, and you don't want people to think that you're a bit cuckoo. That's the big thing. You don't want people to think you're a bit cuckoo. And I found this interesting, considering I'd been such an advocate for people speaking out about mental health, that I couldn't do it myself. It wasn't until a girlfriend of mine took me out for lunch and she said, "I know you're not okay. You've lost your spark. What's wrong?" And I told her. From there, I managed to seek help. I talked a lot to a counsellor. I laid down on a lovely velvet couch, and I'm happy to say that I recovered, although I still do avoid certain situations. I also successfully sued 2 individuals and an organisation who'd promulgated these defamatory statements about me in a landmark case of social media defamation. This took guts, and I'm proud of what I did, because it sets a new standard and sends a clear message that it's not okay to bully somebody and that a tweet can hurt. I think it took guts for me to talk about this tonight, because I haven't actually spoken about this publicly at all. And I find this odd, as I said, that we talk about other medical conditions freely. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but how many times have you been trapped at work having a conversation with someone about their hemorrhoids? Or, seriously, or their strange and slightly pungent rash. I've had lots of conversations with those sorts of people. I personally find my friends constantly talk about pus. If there's pus anywhere on their body, they talk about it. They talk about sporting injuries, they talk about man flu, and Paddy Phillips, a word that you will love, sputum. People talk about sputum too. But we can't seem to, as a society, handle a little sadness, a little anxiety. We don't seem to be able to handle it when people's lives are not quite right. So tonight, let's try and free it up a little bit. Let's leave here tonight feeling ready to discuss our mental health like all our other health issues. We have to be the change. We're all in this together, and we must remember to be mindful of our actions on social media. We must protect each other. And I say that too about social media when we've got some gorgeous students here from Mary MacKillop College. You school kids, you younger people seriously work in that world now with social media. You have to be careful. It can be really dangerous. We must stand up to bullies. We must avoid dickheads as well. I'm sure they're teaching you that at Mary MacKillop College. May peace be with you. And we also have to make sure that we're there for our friends. We have to ask their friends if they're okay. We have various mental health issues, mental health days during the year. We have the Are You OK Day, where everyone walks around and says, "Are you okay?" That's great on one day. Let's do it every day. Let's do it as often as we can. Let's genuinely show an interest in our friends and in people that could be our friends. Because, sometimes even our most solid, robust and tough friends like me can get shaky. So just on that, and in the spirit of honesty and with a nod to kindness, let's just take a few moments to introduce yourself to someone in the audience that you don't know and have a little chat about mental health. Thank you. Go on, do it. Did you all talk to someone? Yes, Amanda. Was that fun? Do you all feel better? Excellent. Peace be with you. That's my thing. Okay, so who was here last year? Oh, great. We've got some, frequent flyers back. Excellent. We'll stamp your card when you're leaving tonight. So for those of you that weren't here last year, well, this is sort of Adelaide's cheaper version of the Gruen transfer, but no less lacking in intelligentsia, I can tell you right now. We've got some magnificent people that are going to be coming up here tonight and providing some very interesting information for you all. The Gruen transfer, for those of you that watch the show, the Gruen transfer or the Gruen effect is a moment a person stops shopping for a particular item and begins shopping in general. So, when you go into the store to buy, this happens to me every time I go into Costco. Like, I go in to get 48 rolls of toilet paper because I do have 4 children, and I come out spending about $1,200 and I'm pushing 2 of those giant trolleys. Now, the only good thing about spending all that money at Costco is the fact that you feel really skinny when you're behind the trolleys because they're so goddamn enormous. So if you are suffering from a self-esteem issue, just head to Costco. That's my tip for you all tonight. I like to do it in my bathers too because there's a lot of really overweight people at Costco and I feel great when I'm out there. That was a joke. That was a joke. See, I'm crap at it. That's why you should never have said I was a comedian. So the Gruen transfer is that when you go in and you go in to buy one thing and then you go, oh my God, I'm just here to shop. I need everything. It's frequently experienced inside shopping centres with all of its dazzling displays and shop fronts and noise and activity. And it is named after the father of the shopping mall, Victor Gruen. What a great man he is. So the aim of tonight's challenge is to use the Gruen effect to sell mental health and well-being and to have a conversation about what has been considered difficult or a taboo subject. Now, what is mental health? Because a lot of people go, well, what is mental health? According to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realises his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution positively to his or her community. Poor mental health can be more difficult to identify and much harder to talk about. Mental health issues are broad and complex. At one end of the scale, the anxiety, stress and anger we feel when caught in traffic can be a mental health issue. Well, it is a mental health issue, Adelaide. It's everywhere. And at the other end of the spectrum, of course, there are severe illnesses like schizophrenia. This year's focus for Admental was employers and employees and first responders. It's worth noting that first responders, those we consider to be the strongest and mentally toughest, can experience quite severe mental health challenges themselves. And our first responders are people like police, the fire brigade, an ambulance, SES and CFS officers. If we call upon them to help us when we're at our most vulnerable, they can also face mental health challenges, so it's not hard to believe the rest of us can too. And have we got many paramedics in the audience tonight? Because we did ask lots of first responders to show up. Because I do say, if we do have any paramedics, and I'm sure their job is obviously horrendously stressful, but then being made to wear a green uniform every day also, I think, really ramps up the stress. I know it would for me. Green's a shocking colour. A recent initiative from the South Australian Police Association supporting their members and encouraging them to take police mental health seriously used the phrases 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Well, maybe not always. And not all wounds are visible. Mental health silence is not an option. I think that they are both really good campaigns. This initiative recognises the importance of mental health and well-being for their members, their families and friends. This is also a commitment from SafeCom, who aim to improve the mental health and promote mental resilience amongst first responders, including all employees and volunteers. So that's even the people on the phones. Like, that would be an incredibly stressful role to have. As we know, mental health and well-being is everybody's business. From tonight's event and the ads from the agencies, we hope to further increase awareness and start conversations about mental health and wellbeing. Tonight we have invited two of our leading creative agencies to sell the unsellable, and we'll also discuss why we buy and how we're sold. But before we get into our panel conversation, I would like to invite John Mannion from the Flinders Foundation to say a few words.
I feel like I should thank the sex goddess for the introductory.
Well, you should.
Can you hear me okay? Yep. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Mannion. I'm the Director of Major Projects at Flinders Foundation. And we're really pleased to be one of the major sponsors here again this year. I've actually worked in mental health for 30 years. I talk about mental health for over 30 years. I'm still passionate about mental health, and I hope for the next 30 years I'll continue to be that passionate. I feel sorry for my family because for 30 years they've listened to me talk about mental health and the impacts and what we should do about it. And it's really interesting that the challenges I faced when I first started as a mental health nurse in the northwest of England about talking about mental health is still an issue 30 years on. So it's fascinating that I've got a complex situation, a complex issue, and we're still at the talking stage. But talking's good. Last year's event was a great success, and we had two very, very different adverts presented. They highlighted the diversity and the complexity that's actually associated with mental health and well-being. They also identified the challenges that are associated with the use of language. What is mental health? What is mental well-being? What's a mental health problem? Why do we have mental in each one of those statements? Also looked about, do we actually understand communication, and do we understand what stigma is and how the impact stigma can have? The aim then was to start an ongoing conversation, to facilitate and participate in an event that really takes a different approach and an innovative angle. You shouldn't have used innovative because it's a word I can't say very well. So an innovative angle to start to talk about mental health. We want to also be able to identify that it's actually good to have this conversation. How do we normalise the conversation about talking about our thoughts and our feelings without it being seen as a weakness? So, how big is this challenge? So I thought I'd actually, with it being the Gruen effect, I wouldn't be a mental health clinician for a change, and I'd look at it from a different angle. So I wanted to look at what are the ratios, what are the impacts we actually have. So 1 in 5 in mental health is a very interesting statistic. But some of these aren't to do with mental health. 1 in 5 people on their way here today will have been texting while driving. All the police are looking down, it wasn't them. 1 in 5 mammals are at risk of extinction. 1 in 5 English cricketers were out for a duck in the Ashes this year. 1 in 5 vehicles in Australia would fail a safety test if we had one. My favourite, because my daughter gave me this one, she works at the Aquatic Centre, 1 in 5 Australian adults have admitted to having a wee in a public swimming pool. I was told as a child that they put a dye in there, and if you do it, you get this blue behind you. I'm not sure it's true. 1 in 5 Australians are a migrant. 1 in 5 children in Australia will have a parent who experiences a mental health difficulty. 1 in 5 people will have a diagnosed mental health condition during their lifetime. And possibly 1 in 5 of you are looking around the room. You're counting and you're working out, is that you? We know there are many other different figures about that highlight the impact of mental health and the incidence, and also the even higher levels of non-disclosure about mental health issues. So this year, the Admental approach has started to focus on mental health in the workplace. I should have another slide coming up, if that's all right. We've mentioned there are different campaigns and different stigma campaigns that have been taking place to get the conversation going. Most people know Are You OK Day? And the concept around that was actually stopping for a moment to actually ask a friend, a colleague, a neighbour, how they were actually doing. The concept around it actually started because someone actually asked that conversation once to someone who was really successful and having a successful life and having a good marriage and a good business, but deep down was really, really struggling and felt suicidal. And the conversation was the trigger point for him to do something about it. And that's where Are You OK Day was established. The top one is Change Direction. Change Direction is a campaign that's been established over in America. This was initially set up to actually start the conversation and change the direction of the mental health conversation to make it normal to have. To identify the 5 triggers when somebody becomes unwell and the 5 steps and stages you can do about to sort of reduce the impact. This presently is now owned by 25 million Americans, all have this as little wallets in their card in their wallet. The veteran population of America and Canada, all serving veterans, have this card. And wouldn't it be fabulous if we could actually develop this to break down that conversation here in Australia? And my favourite is it's okay not to be okay. Most people won't have seen this campaign. I suggest you Google it. It's one from Scotland. As you can imagine, the language might be slightly more colourful than mine. There might be the odd word that starts with an F built into it, and it's not football. But it talks all about it's actually okay not to be okay. How many times does someone say to you, how you doing? And your first reaction is, yeah, I'm fine, thanks. But actually you feel really, really shitty. You don't want to talk to anyone, you don't want to engage with anybody. And this campaign really actually opens up the opportunity to say it's actually okay to have that conversation. So there are lots of different processes out there to start our conversations. And we've still got a real challenge now to how do we transfer the conversation into an action. So the challenge for tonight then was looking about how we would gain support in the workplace that can be related then to many different things. So why do we not have these conversations in our workplace? Why do we not have clear policies and procedure and practice? Is that because of the stigma that's attached to it? Is it because people feel there's a risk about talking about it? Is there a lack of policy, a lack of procedure, or actually the fear that you won't be supported if you actually raise an issue? Our perceptions then say that we should actually be strong, we should actually be resilient, and we should know how to deal with this, and we shouldn't actually ever show any signs of weakness. The University of Adelaide earlier this year identified that nearly 1 in 5 firefighters in South Australia have a mental health issue, and that 1 in 10 experienced a suicidal thought during that period of time. So the people that we turn to in society when we're at a crisis point are actually only human too. And they need the support mechanisms to be developed in the same way as we do. So yet, why don't we gain access? Why don't we look for help? There was a survey done in 2000. It actually identified 6 different reasons. The first reason was 28% of people felt that if I brought it up, no one could actually help me. So how isolative that must feel. They felt that they should actually be able to deal and cope with this problem on their own. That's another 28% of people. 17% thought they didn't think it was necessary to actually talk to anyone, and it's definitely not necessary to go and talk to a doctor about their problems. 15% thought that the problem would just get better by its own. 13% remained too embarrassed to talk to anybody about it. And 10% of people were really concerned about the consequences if they raised an issue, what would actually happen to themselves. So tonight we're going to see 2 different adverts to keep the mental health conversation going. They won't provide all the answers tonight for us. The agencies are really, really good, but in the time span we gave them and the lack of money we gave them, they're not able to perform miracles. But they will provoke opinions, both positive and negative. They will highlight the challenge we face on a daily basis, and they will continue to motivate us not to rest until we actually do find some of the answers and some of the solutions. But we also need to remember that mental health and well-being are often associated with negative interpretations, with myths and perceptions, but that doesn't always have to be the case. So I'd like to introduce you to my family. So this is my dad in the middle, and these are my brothers and sisters. I'm the lucky middle one of 7. So those of you who will realise that obviously was an Irish Catholic family. Father obviously had no rhythm. Mum obviously didn't like watching the telly. I was very fortunate. I was brought up in a very loving family. My dad owned a shoe shop, which is quite handy when you've got 7 children. But we lost our mother to cancer, very aggressive cancer, very, very rapid, and she was the centre point of everything we did. So I'm one of 7, good education, not too much trouble. Parents aren't here, so I can perhaps elaborate on that, but not too much trouble. But if you look at my family there, we've got a dentist, we've got a mental health clinician, we've got 3 teachers, We've got a manager of a autism home, so really, really clear, caring value base. And we've got a kitchen designer for IKEA. We think he's adopted. But if you look at that, they're incredible people and have achieved some incredible things in their life. Unfortunately, when we lost my mum, 3 people experienced severe depression that meant they couldn't go to work. They didn't know how to cope with the distress and the loss. We had one person that decided it would be more appropriate to actually manage his grief and loss by self-medicating with high levels of cannabis and the impact that had on his mental health and well-being. And we had one who flew 16,000 miles away to get away from them. Guess who that was? But they had the challenge of having to deal with some of the issues that we face on a day-to-day basis. They had the challenges of looking about their own resilience and how they could actually cope with that. They all wanted to address it. We're very lucky. Being a family of 7, we all talk a lot. The boys don't, the girls do. We're all the good listeners, they're the good talkers. But it's really important, I think, that you realise that mental health impacts anybody in any environment. It doesn't really care who it has a go at. The challenge we have is making sure we give people the skills to have a conversation, to feel safe to have a conversation, and do be able to do something about it. So last year, when we spoke at Admental from the Flinders Foundation, we spoke about our own mental health strategy. We're looking at doing a big piece of work. Next week, we'll actually be launching a brand new concept from the foundation. We'll be launching a new mental health research foundation. We'd identified that mental health issues continue to grow at an alarming rate, despite all the incredible work that our services and existing services are putting into place. So next week we'll be launching a new foundation that's going to tackle mental health research head-on. It's a really exciting and innovative development, and we really look forward to sharing it with you. But I want to finish with one last set of data, and I know Dave is looking at me because I was given 4 minutes, and I've got 30 years to fit into 4 minutes. It was never going to go. I want to finish with just some final data sets. 100% of us are unique. 100% of us are important. And 100% of us deserve to live a full and fruitful life. 500 people in South Australia are incredible because they're in this room today. You want to be part of the change. You want to be part of the conversation. And for that, we are incredibly thankful. So thank you for David and his team, the Foundation, for facilitating tonight's events. Thank you very much to the 2 ad agencies. We're really looking forward to sharing their pictures with you and really looking forward to the ongoing conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I wonder what the stats would be around how many of us in the room were looking at your family photo and trying to work out which one was which and which one was the kitchen designer. Were you guys doing that? I absolutely was doing that. If that slide's gone down now, but it's okay not to be okay is the ad campaign that John suggested you should Google. And again, students from Mary MacKillop College, I'd Google that at school. Because it did have a bit of blue language, and it would be quite interesting to see how the teachers react to it. But you're doing it for education, so that's okay. Now we'd like James Rickard, President of the Adelaide Advertising and Design Club, to talk to us about marketing and how we have tackled these issues in the past, and perhaps some secrets and insights into how we sell the unsellable. Please put your hands together.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm here to talk about advertising, which is a blessed relief because it's the only thing I'm qualified to talk about at all. And David, don't worry, I can cut this back to 25 minutes easily. When I began my career about 1,000 years ago in advertising, Fullerton Road and Greenhill Road were known as Advertising Alley. We had about a dozen multinational advertising agencies scattered on or about those roads. But today, all those multinationals have gone. And good riddance to them. They've fused into a seething mass of yuppiedom somewhere on the East Coast where they belong. But what's remained here in Adelaide is a really vibrant business community reflective of the changing shape of the advertising landscape across the globe. Yes, of course, we have advertising agencies, as we've already spoken about. They're dynamic and they're agile, they're independent and they're local. But we also have a new breed of practitioners, as evidenced by our two guests tonight, to pitch. In Super8, we have a collective of sole traders who operate autonomously or collectively as need be. With Floodlight Media, we have a production company serving the needs of ad agencies, but also having the ability to work directly with clients. For clients, this means there's greater diversity and far more choice. More importantly, the choice is between locally owned and locally operated organisations with their head offices, their profits and their hearts right here in South Australia. So for those of you that do have advertising budgets, it's a really good and powerful thing to remember. But while many things have changed in advertising, so much has remained the same. There was, is and always will be a need to change attitude and behaviour of people. Whether it's to convince them to choose one brand of dog food over another, or to change the way they behave behind the wheel of a car. The question we ask tonight is, can advertising change public attitude towards mental health? The answer is, of course it can. Otherwise there's no point in me being here. Changing the community's attitude and behaviour has been done many, many times in the past, and for people as old as I am, you remember things like Norm's Life Be In It campaign and even Key Sab's Drop Something Sport. More recently, the Cancer Council's Slip, Slop, Slap, with the newly extended alliteration of Seek and Slide. The advertising can be negative, it can be positive, it can be smart, or it can be dumb, and that's a beautiful segue to play the tape.
Young people don't messages. So how do you get them to stop being unsafe around trains? By making it the dumbest way to die.
Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die. Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die.
A song was written called Dumb Ways to Die. It was released as a YouTube video and within a week had over 20 million views and coverage on every television network in the country. A dedicated Tumblr site generated huge and immediate viral effect. Within days, Dumb Ways to Die became the world's most shared video. The song was released on iTunes and climbed the charts in over 20 countries, making its way onto playlists everywhere. Radio advertising was purchased, but this song about rail safety was so popular, radio stations played it for free. Awareness went through the roof, but we had to get people to change their behaviour. So every element of the campaign directly drove people to pledge to be safe around trains. Nearly 1 million people took the pledge on our website. The little book of Dumb Ways to Die asked kids to take the pledge. Outdoor advertising got people to promise to be safe and generated Instagram-friendly content. A smartphone game also got people to make the promise. And at train stations, a karaoke version of the song played while posters visually reinforced the message. The results? People adopted the rail safety message like never before. Over 200 cover versions were made. Schools started using it as a teaching tool in classrooms. Dumb Ways to Die became the most shared public service campaign in history. And most important of all, the Metro has seen a 21% reduction in accidents and deaths compared to the same time last year.
Dumbest ways to die. Dumbest ways to die. So many dumb ways to die.
Be safe around trains, a message from Metro.
Of course, I did that. Everyone knows and loves Dumb Ways to Die. It's important to note, however, it was an incredibly successful campaign, not just a solitary ad. It began life, in fact, as a radio ad, but soon was developed into a fully integrated campaign. Some of the elements that you saw there, which added to its success. Incidentally, it not only was one of the most shared campaigns, it was also the most highly awarded advertising campaign. And I did a quick calculation. The agency spent over $150,000 on award show entries to get those awards, and that doesn't include the flights and accommodation for the two individuals that were lucky enough to go around the world picking them up. Not that I'm bitter. But what you're going to see tonight are two executions that are merely the tip of the advertising iceberg. Seriously, the tens of thousands of dollars of time, expertise and intellectual property donated by Super8 and Floodlight Media is fantastic and very, very generous, but it's only a beginning, a starting point, merely a discussion point. Ultimately, what is required is a long-term, strategically sound plan, an advertising partner and a significant budget. It will take time, specialist skills, and it will take money. Now, some will say they can't afford to advertise, but when it comes to mental health, I say you can't afford not to. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Now we are going to invite our panel members up on stage. As they're coming up onto stage, if we could just give them a round of applause, from Black Sheep Advertising, the Managing Director, John McLaren. He was the 2017 inaugural winner of the Jeff Robertson Memorial Award. Callista Thillou, Executive Director, Communication and Engagement at Flinders University. Dr. Fiona Kerr, Neural and Systems Complexity Specialist, Adelaide University. Come on up. And John Mannion, Director, Major Projects, Flinders University. Come on up again, John. And not forgetting from Neami National, the South Australian State Manager, Kim Holmes. Come on up, Kim. Now, while the applause is dying down, what I'm going to do is just read out the biogs of our panel members because they are absolutely formidable. Firstly, John McLaren is the Managing Director of Black Sheep Advertising, who won this event last year. He has had, and it's hard to believe because he looks so youthful, 27 years in advertising, strategy development, education and training. He's a member of the AMA SA Executive Board, a member of the Media Advisory Board at the University of Adelaide, the past chair of the Communications Council of South Australia, board director of the Bureau Board, Advertising Standards Board, past lecturer to TCC Ad School, past member of National Executive Board of the AFA, and a past board director of Clemenger BBDO Adelaide. He's also a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. So welcome to you, John. Dr. Fiona Kerr, apart from having the best hair in the whole room, is at the forefront of grappling with the essential questions of our time from the prism of human connection. She teases apart the neuro-sociological impact of technology and what this means for the future of work, healthcare, ageing, learning and life. A prominent thought leader in the fields of cognitive neuroscience and human connectivity, she combines her role as industry professor, neural and systems complexity at Adelaide University with speaking and consulting internationally on questions around how we shape each other, how technology shapes us, and how we should shape technology for a human-centric future. Oh my God. If any of you are having problems downloading Spotify, you want to talk to her. Dr. Fiona Kerr, well done. Now, John was very humble before when he got up just as, you know, the Director of Major Projects at the Flinders Foundation, but he is responsible for the strategic development and implementation of the Foundation's mental health strategy. He has worked within mental health, as he said, for over 30 years, both within clinical and leadership capacities. He latterly has been the Executive Director of the Mental Health Service within Southern Adelaide Local Health Network. That is a massive job. He has extensive experience in clinical service development, taking the executive lead within SA Health for the development of the statewide eating disorder service, community mental health reform and veteran mental health developments. Well done to you, John, and please a round of applause. And next we have Kim Holmes, is responsible for service delivery, quality and strategic development in South Australia, including subacute and psychosocial recovery and rehabilitation. Her qualifications, a Bachelor of Social Work, Graduate Certificate in Business Management and a Master in Business Administration underway. Thank you so much, Kim. Can't wait to hear what Kim has to say. A round of applause, please, for Kim. And Callista Teo is the Executive Director, Communication and Engagement at Flinders University. She is responsible for leadership of the university's marketing, media, communications, alumni and development and external engagement. She has held strategic roles in higher education both nationally and internationally. Before returning to Australia, she was responsible for leading the UK's higher education representation. She was also the Director of Communications and Government Relations at then the Australian... No, where was that? In Victoria. Was that Canberra at the University of Australia? Well, there you go. That's very formidable indeed. Please, can we have a round of applause for Callista? Sorry I stuffed up your resume, but I did want to read those out because I thought this gives you an indication of the breadth of knowledge that we've actually got up here tonight. These people are absolutely more than qualified to talk about mental health and to talk about our advertising pitches. So let's get straight to the point, shall we? What we have done is we have put this pitch out to 2 advertising agencies. We've given them a brief. The brief is, look, mental health is hard to talk about. You know, we've covered that off before. There's a lot of stigma attached to it. We've thrown lots of statistics at them. We've said that we would like them to kind of go down the workplace angle. We haven't led the witness, but we've said go down the workplace angle because we think that that's a really good start. Some of the statistics that we've given them, there's a big 2-3-page briefing document that we gave them. Things like psychological injury, things like ongoing stress, PTSD or bullying occurs at twice the rate of physical injury, which is quite an extraordinary statistic indeed. There's other stats that we will get to throughout this night, but some of them, as I think John said, 50% of us will have some form of mental health issue in our lifetime, so that's half this room. People with a strong sense of purpose in life have on average better well-being than those who don't have a strong sense of purpose. This leads to better sleep, better sex and a more relaxed state of being. My husband saw that today and asked me to get a sense of purpose. So there's lots of stats in here that we will go through as the night progresses. But let's now, if we can, cue the music maestro and let's get on stage our guests from our advertising agency, can we? We've got Jason Hollenby from Super8 and Cameron Roberts from Floodlight Media. Please welcome them up to the stage. Welcome guys. Super8 formed in 2016 as a curated group of strategic creative doers with complementary skills. They work together as a symbiotic communications resource that operates through an interdependent model of enterprise. It means that people in the group can work independently or be flexible project teams that can be quickly drawn together and then pulled apart, then reformatted to provide greater focus on the particular task at hand. So that's Super8. And Floodlight Media are a local film production company with a national focus and call the SA Film Corporation their home. Of course, that's in the former Glenside site. They are a full-service video and film production company specialising in creative advertising, corporate video, online streaming and event coverage. They work nationally with some of the biggest household names in the country across a diverse range of industries. I read all of that out because it's really important for us to acknowledge that these guys have done these campaigns. They've given up so much of their time. They've given up all of their brain power for absolutely the smell of an oily rag budget. So I think a round of applause, if we can, for Super8 and for Floodlight Media. We had the coin toss before to see which agency would go first, and Super8 won the toss. So, Jason, it is over to you, my friend. Do you want this microphone? Do you want a handheld microphone? You want this one? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks to the Don Dunstan Foundation, AADC, Flinders Uni, Adelaide Uni, James Rickard for talking us into it. I'll get you. Obviously, thanks everyone, actually, anyone who's involved. Obviously, mental health is a very serious issue, but I have to say we had a lot of fun working on this, so Thanks for the invitation. I'd like to acknowledge a few people who donated their time and professional skills, most of whom are part of the Super 8, but we also have some great industry friends who could see the value in being involved too. Just quickly, that involves Nicola Tate, who's a producer at May King, Jane King, who's an art director at Lark Studio, Mark McKenna, who's a whiz film editor at Sparkle, Rose Smith, who directed this thing, also Scott Illingworth, who's an audio engineer at Best Effects. Thank you, Scott. David Gregan, camera operator and cinematographer. RMT Talent Agency, who we did pay a little bit, but they definitely donated a lot of their time as well. I'm also from Super 8 and I'm the writer at the agency. I also just want to quickly thank the Khan Group for giving us full reign of their building on Pirie Street to shoot this advertisement, in particular the building manager, Brett Dutton, who actually features in the ad as well, even though he knew he was being made redundant that week. Lovely man. So here's our thinking. John Mannion, we did Google some mental health and wellbeing campaigns, and if you do that, do click on the images, which we did. What you'll see basically looks like a collection of horror movie posters. I don't know does anyone like horror movies here? Show of hands. Not too many. I do, but I knew that probably wasn't the right thing to do in this case. Everything's really dark in this world. People looking tortured and, well, pretty scary. It's kind of like the movies where there's a noise in the basement. Someone decides to go down there even though the lights don't work, and then chainsaw fires up. You just wouldn't go there, so we decided not to go that direction as well. Instead, we took a lighter path that we felt that people would be more likely to follow. We wanted to help normalise mental health issues in the workplace and also encourage discussion and support without fear. We all have it in our DNA to help others. So when we see people struggling or trying to improve their level of health, be it mental or physical, it's in our nature to want to help or at least be encouraging, or at the very least not get in the way of things. And yet we do often treat mental health and well-being differently to the way we treat physical health and well-being. So our premise, judges, formidable judges, no pressure, is that even though the signs can be different, our ability to empathise and help other people is still the same. So in our advertisement, we're shining a light on awareness and the actions we should be taking to support mental health and well-being. Fortunately, in this world, there are talented people who can see what others can't, but in any event, we can all afford to be more aware and show that we do actually care. So this is what we made. Thank you.
Right, then we should be able to close.
Can't put up with it anymore. I mean, check him out now.
You wouldn't ignore a workmate's physical health, so why ignore their mental health? Just because you can't always see it, doesn't mean you can't help.
Well done, Jason. All right, Cameron, it's your turn now. How did Floodlight Media tackle the wellbeing cell?
Howdy, everybody. When we first received the brief, we immediately began to reflect on why so many people, particularly in professional spaces, still struggle to even talk about mental health in 2018. Even over my lifetime, so many other important social topics have become so easy for us to talk about and work through within our day-to-day lives and at work. Yet many people still struggle to even discuss mental health openly at home, let alone in their workplace. I remember always having those moments when you speak to parents or grandparents and they tell you about the crazy things that used to be the norm back in their day. Children being caned, homosexuality outlawed, racial segregation, and it just seems so unbelievable that these prejudices were acceptable in society. And to talk about them was completely taboo at the time. But then people did start to talk about those issues, and here we are today, and in retrospect it all seems so clear how ridiculous it was to fear an open dialogue in the first place. Yet, due to it being invisible and its variable nature, we aren't quite there with mental health yet. In my short career, I've personally experienced how the climate is changing around mental health awareness, thanks to events like this one. And it's encouraged me to engage with discussions with people around me. And funnily enough, with every chat, it becomes a little bit easier. To the point now where it's just actually become another part of working life. And isn't it strange how people become a bit more relaxed about discussing something when they realise they won't be ostracised for it? You suddenly realise how many people around you deal with some level of mental health issue at some part in their life when they feel like they can tell you without being judged. And it reminds me of recently a certain politician claimed he had no gay people in his electorate. Yes, well, when even your politicians are telling you that you don't exist, it doesn't exactly encourage you to put your hand up, does it? So this set off our ideas of how to best draw this comparison. And we went all over the place just before we took a turn and went for something a bit more straightforward, looking at something that isn't even questioned in the workplace and we personally believe to not be so different in reality. And we had not seen their video before we came up with this idea. I think it's important to also say that we are working in our own workplace, and in a year we have gone from basically just being the three of us to having multiple employees, and we also happen to work in Glenside, which is the old insane asylum they used to call it, so we are constantly reminded of that sort of thing every day. But in just a year we have really begun to take on a different approach to how we talk about these things with people. And we wanted to think about how we could successfully draw parallels between something that people take for granted and something that people unreasonably fear. And you can bring this down to that, so you can bring down that mighty mental block that stops us from taking that first leap towards open discussion. So, as I was saying, in our workplace, we respond to mental illness no different as how we would deal with a physical injury. And this led us down the path of imagining a world where physical injury is treated as invisible and awkward to talk about, like mental illness currently is, and how bizarre that would be. We have an insider. But really, I hope we're all instrumental in creating a world where one day our kids will look at us like we're crazy when we tell them, oh yeah, no, you didn't talk about mental illness in the workplace once upon a time. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay, you're unloading cement bags all of today, so jump on the wheelbarrow, right?
Do you think that's really right for me today?
Why, what's wrong with you?
Well, you know, remember I brought in the doctor's note?
Right. Right. All right, look, if you're not going to be much use to us, just carry on with those orders until you get that sorted out. Bloody hell, it was fine yesterday.
Just because an injury is invisible doesn't mean we can't talk about it. 45% of us will experience a mental health condition in our lifetime. It's time to remove the stigma. Let's talk.
Well done. Oh, now we're up nice and loud. Jason and Cameron, why don't you go and sit down at the end of the table so our panel can talk to you nice and closely and intimately now. Isn't that exciting? There you go, one at each end. You're supposed to be rivals, remember? Come on, show a bit of aggression. Rrr, rrr. Did you like those ads? They were great. So those ads, oh thank you David, those ads are going to be available on the Dunstan Foundation website probably by the end of tonight, I would imagine. We would urge you all to share those ads because they're fantastic and it's on now. Oh gee, you're efficient. Again, Don would be proud. They're on the website now so you can start sharing them. All right, let's rip straight into our panel. Fiona, I'll go to you first. What were your thoughts? We've got a microphone there. What were your thoughts on those ads?
Okay, a number of them. It was interesting that we go to empathy very quickly, and so both ads went to empathy. It's also interesting that we go to the potential lack of empathy around mental illness, and it's also interesting that we look at mental illness potentially over mental health, as in we seem to still look at the positive and the negative in terms of that. So I guess one of the things that strikes me in dealing with people wanting to be more positive and wanting to be more comfortable, because we get what we reward, it is a case of how do you open that door, but for all sorts of reasons. So if you look at the flourishing workplace, there's also so much information around how feeling comfortable and feeling open and feeling valued and feeling capable of having that conversation actually increases, collaboration, creativity, complex problem solving, all of those wonderful things. So I think it's going to be really good when we have a broad range of conversation around almost the continuum between the health and the illness, because we're all on that continuum and we actually move around up and down it at different times of our lives. So the lack of kind of going towards one end and actually talking about how you flourish as an organisation, an individual, a country, that sort of thing will be really interesting. So not so much looking at the level of illness, but looking at the level of wellness.
Yeah, okay, good point. John, what were your thoughts?
Look, I tend to agree with that. It's a little sad that a problem that's this pervasive can come down to sort of single conversations, and that's what ads are really. They're a brand or a cause trying to have a conversation with an audience. I've kind of got to look at this from an advertising perspective because I don't share Fiona's qualifications at all, and so look, I think they were both really good ads. I'm not going to tell you which one I like.
No, don't do that yet.
Best yet.
Please, not too early, John. Not too early.
No, a lot of people have told me that actually.
I'm so glad you took my bait.
Early.
I'm so glad you took it. Sorry, ladies. Sorry, Mary McKillop.
Yeah, wait a little bit, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah. But look, it's having been here, in other words, competing last year, it's an incredibly challenging topic. Like, where do you start, and how do you make 30 seconds or 45 seconds or whatever count for something, particularly around a problem that is everywhere and affects all of us and people we love and people we work with. And so the challenge is extraordinary. It really is. But look, I'm an optimist. I think we'll get there. If it takes advertising agencies and me getting wealthier getting there, then that's
an okay thing. Yeah, that's good for
more
your
ads.
mental health. That's
more
fine.
Ads. Yeah.
I'll ask the other John. You've obviously had over 30 years' experience in this field. Do you think that is how workplaces actually deal with mental health, that they sort of can't talk about it, they just ignore it, they pretend it's not happening? Do you think that those ads were actually quite an honest reflection of what goes on in society?
Well, I've just formulated the answer to your first question, and now I'm in this mad panic of the second question. I think they were really clever. We had a conversation yesterday when we first looked at the adverts, and we spoke about how us in the mental health world make mental health rocket science. And it's not. It's actually really simple processes. So really simple processes about having conversations and feeling safe to have a conversation. It's feeling that once you've had that conversation, something active or proactive is going to happen with it, and then a strategy is going to be developed. And I liked the subtlety. I thought it was really interesting how we had the same advert.
Yeah.
Very clever. And yeah, well, maybe we'll talk about that. But I thought that was really clever, because what it really looked at was, we often talk about mental health being the invisible illness, the illness you don't necessarily always see, and so I get the connection with making it physical into a broken leg or etc. But there are a whole range then of things that we actually do see in mental health that would have been great to explore further. So we actually see that people's facial expressions change. We actually see that people do become agitated or uncomfortable. They do withdraw at pressure times, which was really interesting, because I viewed the lad being left when everyone was having cake as that withdrawal and that isolation. And I found that was really, really powerful, the isolating part, because when the Mental Health Commission went out to do their consultation for the new mental health strategic plan, they were expecting to get feedback about all our mental health service and systems broken, and the most powerful thing they got back is of how my mental health issue has actually made me isolated and not connected to the community, to family, friends, etc. So I thought it was quite a powerful message in there. So I liked the two, and I liked the fact that it was very, very simplistic. This is where me and Fiona are slightly different. Fiona's got this beautiful flow charts on her paper of all the connections.
Oh my God.
I did dot points. So
I love it. Kim, what were your thoughts on that, on both of the ads?
Yeah, well, similarly, I was intrigued that both of the ads focused on the injury, and I think this is a campaign about mental health and well-being, and I think that's what happens in the mental health area, is that when we talk about mental health, we often go to the injury. If we talk about physical health and caring for our physical health, we often go to what prevents and what keeps us well: exercise, sleep, good, diet. It's our environment. We often look at the positives. We have, if we look at, the Slip Slop Slap campaign, for example, we're talking about skin cancer, but we don't focus on the skin cancer. We focus on the prevention. So yeah, I was intrigued by that. And also, I was sort of thinking about, there's a clear message in both of them about the isolation, and that there is this the stigma and the lack of conversation with people when we can see that they're struggling. And I guess that makes me think, why? Why are we anxious or not confident to open conversations with people when we can see that they're struggling? And I think sometimes we're worried about saying the wrong thing. We're worried about, what if they do tell us that there's something wrong? What are we going to do with that? And so it would have been interesting, I think, to see some of the other, some of those things explored.
Do you think we're too broad sometimes when we talk about mental health, that we just talk about mental health generally, and we don't talk about the specific elements of mental health?
Absolutely. I think we interchange mental health and mental illness, where we don't so much with physical health and when people become unwell. With mental health, can be compromised just as our physical health can be. So sometimes we get a sniffle, and we know that if we don't address it and we don't do something about it, it's going to get worse. It's the same with mental health. We know that there's stressors in our lives, or things we're not sleeping as well, or there's indicators before we're injured or before we become really unwell.
Talking to the microphone, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's it, that's okay.
So I think there's indicators way before we become really unwell. So yeah, I do think that we do interchange mental health and well-being, which is that we all have mental health and we all have physical health, and we need to look after them both, and illness.
Maybe break it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Callista, the communications expert, what did you think? Did that communicate the message to you adequately about mental health needing to be taken seriously in the workplace?
In the workplace. So we did have the opportunity to see the ads yesterday.
Can you just talk a little bit closer into the mic?
Sorry.
Thank you. That's
Okay,
it.
so we did have the opportunity to see the ads yesterday. And actually, I have to say, I was really underwhelmed. I mean, high quality production, good actors, the whole lot. I'll tell you why I was underwhelmed. Because they were both very negative. And a little bit like John at the end, I tend towards the positive, optimist. And for me to have both agencies of such good quality to come out with an ad which were very similar, that really focused on the illness and the breakage and that you can't do something when you have a mental health issue, for me just reinforced the stigma actually. As an optimist, how wonderful would it be to have an ad that started with a conversation of someone in a leadership position picking up that signal, picking up the anxiousness, it happened to me today in a one-to-one meeting, and you just pick up the conversation and start
So you
the
think the
conversation
onus
that
was
way.
too heavy on the person affected?
I really like the analogy that you had, which was it's a sniffle. Doesn't mean that you're not productive. You can have the flu, be a little bit less productive. So for me, it portrayed people in the workplace that weren't productive, and it was negative. So in saying that, we did see it yesterday, and I did speak to the panel again this afternoon and said, I did reflect on that. Did it achieve is it achieving its advertising aims? Yeah, I think it will, and I think it does because it's relatable. You can relate to seeing someone with a broken leg or being a little bit isolated. So I'm being wishy-washy. It's because I still haven't chosen which ad I'm going to vote for, because I also want to hear what the audience want to say.
So it's interesting though, isn't it, and I don't know whether we're going off reservation here and maybe asking the advertising guys, but who were you thinking was the audience when you did those ads? Like, was it someone that was affected by mental illness, or was it someone who was in a position to action change within the workplace to make it easier for people with mental illness to come forward?
Well, funnily enough, as I mentioned in my speech there, in just the last year I've become a boss and I've had to be managing a lot of staff, and this sort of issue has come up. And I actually consulted somebody, and because I didn't want to just make assumptions based on something that I'm not a professional on or don't personally understand. And somebody actually gave us this idea and said that they really appreciated the openness of communication, and they find it very frustrating when people don't treat mental illness the same as they would a physical injury. So for us, that's where that idea actually evolved from.
Jason, what about you? Who was your receiver?
We ran a few filters over it during the whole process, actually, just to make sure that we were being sensitive as we knew. To all of the target audiences. That could be people in a mental health situation. It could have been people who have been around others in the workforce, and also superiors who could be responsible for affecting some sort of change. So the other filter, the real filter that we ran across it were the situations that we were putting what we'd affectionately named Gavin into. His real name ended up being Gavin too, incidentally, and he really had a busted hand. The situations that we were putting him into, would they reflect on some level or equally with someone who was in a mental health situation? So moments of isolation, missing out on things through distraction of their own situation, perhaps pushing themselves harder than they should in certain situations to compensate, because they're becoming self-aware and anxious about the mounting issues that they're creating for themselves. So, yeah, I mean, the fact that we kind of both arrived at this invisible injury idea is probably because we were briefed in a particular way. That could always lead the witness timeframes too, you know. Here's a good idea, let's go with it. But the fact that we did kind of latch on that was probably a reflection of our own personal experiences in the workforce, whether it's a construction site, which we're not as familiar with, or a more office environment, which we went for because it was more achievable.
I'll ask John McLaren, do you think maybe it was a little bit too subtle? Because I think those things that you've just mentioned there, Jason, are great, but maybe they were just a bit subtle. Do you think we could have ramped it up a bit more? Advertising man, go on.
Jason, what do you think? Look, I actually, I think they both teams came at it from a slightly different angle. I think, can we start talking about where we're sitting on this, or not really? No?
What was that?
Can we start voting?
Yeah, we're going to start voting in a minute.
Oh, okay.
God, there he is again.
What?
Straight to the end point. Seriously, are you single? What's going on? My God.
No, but I might be. Look, they both used different techniques. There's a bit of a common denominator that's emerged over the last, 10, 15 years in cause-related marketing, and that's humour, because it's got a subtlety. It's also seductive. It kind of draws people in, whether it's cartoons, the norm thing, where we kind of poke fun at something, or it's the dumb ways to die, where you lampoon what actually is a really serious issue.
Yeah.
It kind of draws you in, and so there's no clear answer, I suppose, is the point, because the other version was a bit of storytelling, quite specific, quite contained, and it was on a work site. So for me, that's how I'm kind of judging the two, is their ability to kind of draw people in, draw as many people in as they possibly can, because as we keep saying, and as James pointed out, we should be talking about campaigns, not 30-second ads.
Yeah.
But we are. That's the problem we've got. And in that situation, I'm judging them on their ability to talk to as many people about as many issues as possible.
To be broad.
In a short period of time, and kind of draw people in.
I want to give the microphone, to Fiona.
Having said that they're both similar and that they were negative, at the same time, I think they reflect exactly where we are. And so I spent 30 years in workplaces before I went back and tried to delve into what is it that's going on. And so often I was an org psych, but I was also the manager, and it was really interesting. That was quite conflicting for people sometimes, that they didn't know whether I was kind of, the positive or the negative. And so very often I was also trying to tell other managers how to cope with the things that were difficult to talk about, and that they were petrified. We were talking about this yesterday. It was, but what if they do actually tell me? And very often you don't have to actually have the answers, you just have to be present. And it's, how do you help? So in the mine, so for example, working in mines, I had to work quite a long time with managers for them to stop helping the guy who was depressed and therefore drinking, and therefore they would lock them in the cupboard during the day when they came to work drunk so that they wouldn't get found and wouldn't get fired. And it was a case of saying, well, that's not actually helping him, so let's have a look at how you would help him instead. And those were the conversations that were really difficult. It was really the systemic difficulty around they didn't know how to step in when they didn't step in. That's all very foggy. We're not good at that at all. So you leave people stranded, and therefore they can't work with other people because they don't actually know where to go and what to do and what not to do either. So we're very clumsy about it, and we're still there.
Callista, I'll go back to you with your communications role, and also you've had some lived experience of mental health or shaky mental health. Did you want to talk about that?
Well, we're here to talk about that.
Specifically, yeah, we are, yeah. But we're not necessarily just talking about your mental health. But did that, as someone who had some mental health issues, did you look at those ads and go, yep, I get that. That makes me feel a bit better, although you weren't so hot on the ads?
Do you know what? I think that's why they grated with me, actually, because that was not my experience. And I didn't, for me, they weren't relatable. And when I thought about it overnight and was thinking about, well, what were the target audiences, and I reread the brief, and I understand how you both got to where you got. But to me, that wasn't quite relatable. So what relates to me is, so, one in, 45% of us have had a mental health issue, and so I'm saying I'm the one on this panel that there are times in my life where it's been an issue for me. It hasn't stopped me doing anything. And in fact, if anything, as I've gone through and, built experience and time in the workplace, I'm actually much more open about it. And as an example, today I had a much more junior team member who was sitting across the table from me. We'd had a half an hour conversation, not all of it easy. And this team member was not themselves. So I asked the question, and then that point happened where the tears came. I haven't been sleeping. Why haven't you been sleeping? I wake up at 4 o'clock in the night and I think about work. And my motto is we spend so much time at work. The minimum time most people spend at work if you're full-time is 37 and a half hours. For goodness sake, you've got to enjoy it, not, live it outside of work. And so that conversation ensued. So I shared a little bit of my story. And I hope that has had some impact on this, junior member of staff who's, probably got another 40 or 50, maybe 60 years work left in, years left in the workforce. That junior member of staff texted me at 6 o'clock this evening and said, thank you very much for sharing your personal story. You've had a really big impact on me. And if that's one thing I can do this week that's positive, then hopefully I've made a little bit of a difference.
Oh, you have? I think that's fantastic. Well done, and thank you for being so open about that tonight too. Kim's reaching for the microphone. Take it away, Kim.
I just was thinking about, I'm working in an organisation that's a specialist mental health service, so we're obviously working with people that have experienced mental illness and supporting them in their recovery and rehabilitation. But what's also important, as I've been thinking a lot about the work health and safety and how we treat physical injuries and psychological injuries. So as an employer of almost 100 people in our organisation, that's something that's really important to us because injury, first of all, we care about our workforce, but injury also has a cost as an employer in many ways. And so thinking about that, like often we put a lot of energy into preventing the physical injuries, but do we as employers and colleagues and teams put the same focus on the prevention of psychological injury? And we can do that with strong leadership in the culture of an organisation. I think that's important for us to be thinking about.
Right, I can see John. He just needs a drink really badly. So can we now? Are we ready to vote? Are we all ready to vote? And then we're going to be asking you to vote as well. Again, I just think Jason and Cameron, thank you so much for putting all that effort into those ads. They really are great. Thank you to our panel members for providing those insights. That's really appreciated because I think a lot of us can understand where we're heading a bit more. Now it's time to vote. All right, Fiona, I'm going to make you the first assassin. I'm so sorry. Fiona, who do you vote for and why?
Yes, it is slightly different. So what did I like about each? So the Super 8, I liked the fact that there was a wider story and you didn't kind of have one person to dislike, if you like. And so it wasn't a case of that person might have just been, really wrong. And I liked the fact that it was consistent, but it also was one of those things that really did tug at the heart of, well, my goodness, we definitely wouldn't do that. Whereas the other one, yes, we did have the single person, but we also had somewhere to go in terms of you had statistics and you had the conversation. So I actually liked something about both. I guess if I'm picking, then I would pick...
You have to pick, Fiona.
Yes,
you have to pick. No fence sitting, my friend. It's one or the other.
So I would pick because of the wider story and maybe the sort of direction. Then I would pick Super 8.
Super 8. Okay, one vote to Super 8. All right. Thank you, John McLaren. I'll ask you. This is the moment you've been waiting for all night. Skyrockets are going to go off.
What? We need to talk.
I know we do. There's a lot you need to learn.
What did you say? I can't hear a word you're saying, by the way. I thought they were both really, really neat spots. I think the building site one was like a neat piece of storytelling, and really nice technique. As a kind of an ad guy, the Super 8 one for me though kind of won out because it touched on so many aspects. It sort of had a subtlety to it. There was the lift doors closing. I thought was something that we've all experienced. Too busy to get to the birthday cake, or incapable of getting there, or away that day. We've all felt that sense of being left out. And then this overarching thing about acceptance, which for me is probably the deal maker. This word acceptance. If 1 in 5 suffer from mental health, then it covers a lot of territory, and I felt Super 8's managed to do that, and they did it in a disarming way. As I said, humour's pretty seductive, and they get my vote.
Okay, thank you. 2 votes for Super 8. Don't feel bad. No votes yet for Floodlight Media. Not there's any pressure on you, Callista. Who would you like to vote for?
I'm really glad, sorry. I'm really glad I'm next because I really didn't want to be the 5th in line and have a hanging vote. So I have actually made up my mind, and I'm going to take an opposite view. I loved the storytelling, and the production value was fantastic, but I think sometimes simplicity is best. And I think your advertisement had a nice, neat, simple take-home message, which I think could hit a wider proportion of the public. So my vote is for Floodlight.
For Floodlight. Okay, well done. Now, Kim, you are next.
I think they both conveyed the experience of people, their isolation and the struggle that they have. So I think they were both really great ads, but I've also gone with the Super 8. The main reason being that it portrayed the wide range of people that could have helped, and the wide range of situations that there could have been an impact. So Super 8.
Thank you, Kim. Bit of a shame, though, that Kim didn't make it, so scores were even, and we could all feel the tension rise, and we're all getting sweaty palms, and then it was over to John, and he had to pick the winner. But let's tell us anyway what you thought of both of the ads and who you would pick.
I feel
Not
so
wanting
left
to-
out.
Yeah, I know. Don't feel left out.
I was
Hey,
looking
you're-
forward to being Simon Cowell.
No, you're one of 7. You can deal with it, seriously.
I loved both of them, and I liked the simplicity. I think there was some subtlety that was actually really missed in when Floodlight's conversations, when stats started to come in, you actually missed out the bloody hell he was okay yesterday point. And I love the fact that they said you need to get that fixed. I thought that was very, very clever.
Yeah.
It would have been incredible then if the two guys talking, if the one guy said he was all right yesterday, if the other guy said, I'll go and talk to him then. That would have been beautiful. The same then with Super 8 in that I loved the simplicity of the complexity he actually had and how that was actually portrayed. And I would have loved not just the knock on the window, because the knock on the window to me, I felt he was in trouble. Wouldn't it be great if he came out and put his arm around and said, do you fancy a cup of tea, mate? And that would have again been a really great way to finish that off. Having said that, I am going with Super 8 as well.
Super 8. All right, ladies and gents, we have a winner. To present the Jeff Robertson Trophy, you can take it away.
Thank you. I don't get to vote, which is a relief because I represent all of the agencies in the industry. But I've got a microphone, so I get to say something. I think the thing, I want to thank you both again for putting a mighty effort in. But the thing for me, as a past manager and an insensitive, intolerant person at times, both ads really made me reevaluate my approach to mental health for staff members. Because I could see a number of times going, wow, I haven't done that. I'm not that insensitive to slam the door in the face of somebody on crutches, but it really made me think twice about how I should approach issues in the workplace. So thank you for that. The award we're handing out is the Jeff Robertson Memorial Award. Now, Jeff actually held my position along with Anna Bardsley-Jones up until just before last year's event. Jeff is an advertising legend in Adelaide and a wonderful man. He was instrumental in getting this event off the ground along with, or at least getting the advertising community on board with David and the team at Don Dunstan Foundation. And he unfortunately passed away suddenly and unexpectedly days before the event, which was his making last year. So this award's in his honour, and of course it goes to Super 8. So Jason.
Thank you, James. Thank you also for the panel again. It's always nice to get that sort of that calibre of feedback on the fly is just stupendous. We never get that in this game, but a tremendous level of thinking off the fly like that, quite amazing. The guys at Super 8 and the friends of Super 8 too, everyone worked really hard on this, so it's nice to have it validated in this way. I'd like to acknowledge Jeff Robertson too. He was a mentor to me, and actually I can say that he was instrumental in getting my first job in this game. So this one's for you, mate, wherever you are. Thank you.
He was a good man, and he does leave a big hole. Thank you and congratulations. I'm sure he'd be incredibly proud of you. We now have a People's Choice Award to present. That we have the Chief Medical Officer of SA Health, the man who stands outside the Royal Adelaide Hospital every flu season saying, Yes, we've got, no, we've been overrun with the flu. Please make sure you use a hanky and don't cough on anyone. And all those years, the PhD and everything, it all comes together at that exact moment. Ladies and gents, can you please welcome to the stage the Chief Medical Officer, Professor Paddy Phillips. Do you want to say a few words or not?
I would very much like to thank the panel and the ad agencies for bringing this message to light. It is a fundamental message, and having someone with mental health issues in my family, it's very important, so thank you very much.
Okay. Oh. So what we have to do is we just have to clap, and Paddy, you have to be the judge. So go out the front with your very excellent ears.
I've got my hearing aids in.
Oh, I don't care if you've got your hearing aids in. It's time. I've got my incontinence pad on, and I didn't make a big deal of that, did I? So I want you to, when I say the company, you have to clap for the one that you liked the most. All right, so firstly, is it Super8? Or is it Floodlight Media? Oh, well done. Well done. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paddy. Congratulations, Floodlight. See, you both get to take something straight home to the pool room. That's so exciting. We're so happy about that. All right, now I would just like to, if I can, welcome up to the stage a man who is heading up the Don Dunstan Foundation. He does an absolutely tremendous job, David Pearson.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I just wanted to say a few words of thanks to wrap up for tonight, but really, tonight is about the power of marketing and how we can put that to what should be pretty apparent by now, one of the most important causes we can put it to, changing the attitudes and opinions on mental health. And I think we've done that in spades tonight, so I really just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been involved. We all have heard that mental health is an issue that affects all of us. We've heard some powerful stories from everyone, from Amanda to Callista to everyone else on the panel, from our own personal experiences, Paddy's family. We all have people who are affected by mental health. I'm affected by mental health, and it's something that we need to talk more about and reflect on in our workplaces, in our communities, and do what we can do to change the attitudes to mental health. So I hope tonight has helped you to think about that. Somebody was telling me the other day that Martin Luther King lived his life with debilitating depression, and I didn't really know that at the time. And it made me reflect on this quote that I have about him, that only in the darkness can you see the stars. And I reflected slightly different on that when you think that he lived a life with depression, and we can all do different things. And probably where I like to start the thanks for tonight is all of those organisations who work in the mental health sector and the people here tonight who work in the mental health sector. You work each and every day to lead, to light a path out of the darkness for some of our fellow citizens who need it the most. So thank you to what you do every day. Particularly to SA Health, the Flinders Foundation, to the Mental Health Coalition, to Neami and the Faith Fuller Foundation, all of those organisations that have supported tonight that work in the health or the mental health fields. Particular thanks to them for what they've made tonight possible. Thanks to the marketing community for getting behind this event. To James, you have been fantastic this year. Really appreciate everything you've done. To the whole AADC crew, it's been amazing to work with you and really appreciate that. I think you can feel the emotion in the room when we talked about Jeff Robinson's contribution to this event, and Jeff helped put this whole thing together, so I wanted to acknowledge that as well. Thanks to Fresh FM this year for helping us get the word out about this event. We really appreciate that. If you haven't heard the ads, you can find them on our website, and they're pretty cool. They're radio ads, though, so they don't work so well for an event like tonight. Can I also thank the agencies who were involved last year, and John, like the agencies to get behind this the very first time. It was really impressive, and I can't say enough how much of incredible amount of time and energy and their own resources that they do in an industry that's quite works on small margins. To do that amount of pro bono work is really appreciated, so thank you to all of them. As we've reflected on, changing attitudes in the workplace is incredibly important. As we've mentioned, I think Amanda brought up, psychological injury does occur at twice the rate in the workplace as physical injury, but receives so much less of the attention. And so one organisation that's trying to change that is Return to Work SA, and they've been so generous in supporting not just tonight's event but last year's. So thank you to the Return to SA people here and for the people who do the work they do every night, every day. We also mentioned that the first responders is an area of really increasing attention, and so I really wanted to thank all the first responder organisations, particularly the South Australian Fire and Emergency Services Commission and the Police Association for supporting tonight. There are some prizes for some of the school kids who are here tonight. We have the CFS Koala Bears and the SES Penguins for you, so just see some of the Dunstan Foundation team at the back and we'll get them to you before you leave. And we also have the MFS Foundation Dogs, which I will present to the panel members shortly. But thank you to all those first responder organisations you've got behind tonight. Oh, Amanda's going to do it now. She's making up friends with John for all of this ribbing she's given him for the last hour. Thank you to Shingleback Wines, who have supported the wines that you'll enjoy shortly. I do encourage you to stick around and have a drink. And particularly thanks to the Flinders University and the University of Adelaide, who are constant and massive supporters of the Dunstan Foundation. Without their help and assistance every day, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So thank you to those universities. And finally, can I thank the particular people that were involved with tonight. Kath Thomas from SA Health, Emily Soda, who's just joined the Dunstan Foundation team, and tonight was her first big event. So well done, Emily. I can see you going red from all the way up here. Can I thank all the Dunstan Foundation staff, all the volunteers? Can I pay tribute to Lynn Arnold, the Chair of the Trustees for the Dunstan Foundation, and Kathy King, the Chair of the Committee of Management, who are here as well. Thank you for the support you provide all year. Thank you, Amanda, for being such a wonderful MC. And last of all, I guess thank you so much to all of you for being here. It's really important that we have an event like this, that we tell the story. So please share the videos, talk to your friends, talk to your families, change the attitudes that are out there. And one last thing I should mention, the gifts you have in front of you as the speakers and the panel members, thank you for your contribution. And we've also made a donation to you through the South Australian startup sort of micro donations platform called Good Thanks. And on there, we've made a donation on your behalf, and you can allocate it to your favourite mental health charity. So you get a dog and a donation. So thank you for your efforts. But that's it from us. The Dunstan Foundation, as Amanda said, is here to inspire action for a fairer world. We hope tonight we've done that for you and that you will join us and part of our events and activities in the future. So please stick around, have a drink and make some friends, and let's talk about mental health.